Our bigger one has 60,000 acres on it, and I'm sure this thing could reach that just as easy. So we started fourth cut yesterday, and since we've had the mower for a couple months now, figured go through and talk about some of the things that I like about the mower, a couple things that I don't like, and I guess talk about some of the things I got wrong that I said when we first got the mower. And then I also wanted to compare it to the big M1 that we have and kind of show you the differences and how it really changed from that first generation mower to this one. So obviously this is the Krone's cab, a lot different from the big M1 that you'll see later. So to let the mower deck down, you obviously push that button, push that down button, and they both come down at the same time. And the other one, you had to hold two different buttons to do that. Turn the mower deck on, all you do is push that button again, and you can turn them all at the same time. If you wanted to, you can push each one individually, depending if you have all the mower decks on or not. So some of the things I do like about this mower is I like the joystick. I never had the 420, which they already had this style joystick for that mower. The 400 was a little bit different, and I never really liked that one. And I like this one more than the big M1 as well. So just everything is kind of in a row. While the 400, they were kind of on top of each other, kind of how the big M1 was, and it just wasn't as easy to use. And then obviously this 450 has the merger control buttons on the joystick, which is convenient. I like the horsepower in this mower. Any hill that you pull, you don't have to worry about lagging, and the hydros are a lot better. For the 400, it always had problems anyway, so I don't know if it would have been 100% how it would have handled it. But compared to like the big M1, it was a lot, this thing's a lot better. So something else that's really nice about this mower is how quiet this cab is. Even compared to the 400, it's a lot quieter than that. And when you hear what the cab sounds like in the big M1, you'll definitely hear a big difference. I'm sure you can hear me as well on that as this. The seat's very comfortable too. Where your hand sits. Something else that's really nice about this, which the other big M's had as well, but comparing it to the big M1, I had to always hold my hand on the joystick because it was kind of like the John Deere choppers. It was just a hydro, really. While these are smart drives, so you just kind of put it at the speed that you want, and you can let go of the joystick and it'll just stay at that speed, so it doesn't wear your arm out as much. So I do want to talk about a couple of things that not that I don't like, but maybe some things that Krone can change that'll make it better. Obviously there's PTOs that drive the side mowers now, and there's two U-joints that I think they should change. Right now the grease fitting is in the center, and it would be a lot more convenient if on the caps they had if they had a cap on, like two caps with like a grease fitting with a 90. That way you can just go straight in and grease it instead of having to go between the knuckle and bend your grease gun to get that locked in. I think that's something that can be changed pretty easily, and it'll save the guy greasing quite a bit of time and headache, and probably be done a lot more often just because it would be a lot easier. So that hopefully they could change that. At least I would change it. Something else that I would hope they would put on is mowers have a breakaway for the side mower, so if you hit a rock or something, it lets go, and I can show you that after. I didn't really know about that before. So on that breakaway, if they could put a sensor, like just a motion sensor, so like if it breaks away, it detects that it isn't connected anymore where it's supposed to be, and then it'll alert you in the computer. And also it wouldn't allow the mower decks to fold up. That way it doesn't hit anything on the fender or anything. So they made this mower a lot more fuel efficient than the Big M400 that I ran. I'm not sure what the fuel efficiency was on the 420, so I can't really talk about that. See, is a half a gallon per acre. So compared to the 400, which was it took a 3/4 of a gallon to do an acre. So that's quite a bit of difference. And I think the Big M1, I have to look what that is. I can't recall it, but I know so you're about it takes about a third less fuel to do the same amount of acres in this than it does the Big M400. And a lot of that, it's got a wider mower deck. You can mow a little faster. So some of the things that we got wrong on this mower was the amount of belts that it has. So this mower actually has 6 belts. You have a belt in the front mower deck that runs the conditioner, and then you have for the side wings, there are 2 belts that run the mergers. And then there's 3 belts on the inside of the mower, well, in the middle of the mower, that engages each mower deck. Another thing that we got wrong was the suction for the radiators. They have a separate blower that actually sucks all that down. So the biggest differences between the Big M450 and the Big M1, I would say, is the Big M1 has a 30-foot mowing span, while this has a 32.8, I believe. The Big M1's mowing speed was set at 11 miles an hour, and this one is set at 16.4. But I mean, I still really only mow 11 or so. Right now I'm only mowing 8 just because of the field. This machine's quite a bit longer, so the wheelbase is set further apart. And I want to say that it does steer a little sharper, but it does kick up the sod a little bit more, just because it's a heavier machine. And I do have to turn a little bit more slowly, I think, with that than with this, than with the Big M1. But something I do like about this mower more is your steering wheel is smaller, and you don't have to steer it as much to make a turn. Like my hand used to be quite tired on the first day. The Big M1. The Big M1 also has 150 less horsepower. It doesn't have the merger, which I know they could put a merger on them, but it does not have the power to run mergers. So I would never want that. Greasing this machine is also a lot easier than the Big M1. And obviously, I don't think they had them on the Big M1s, but from Big M2s on, they did have auto lube. So I mean, even our Big M400 had auto lube and stuff, so there was a lot less greasing involved. So I mean, I'm just comparing this thing to the Big M1 just because, just so you can kind of see the difference in the 2 machines and where they came from. But they did a lot of work in between. So Krone definitely makes a reliable machine. I mean, our Big M1 has around 60,000 acres on it. That was a 2,000, so hopefully this machine can get up there too, which I'm sure it will. It's definitely built a lot more rugged than the Big M1. They came a long way. They have the safeguard and the mower decks. They have the breakaways. They have the suspension, so everything is a little easier on the machine. legs are built stronger now than they were back in those big M1s. So I'm very happy with this machine. Alright, so we're out here. I just wanted to show you where I'm at. So right here is the breakaway. So that pops open and the mower deck swings sideways, swings that way. And if they could put a sensor in here, that way the computer would read if this broke away. That way the operator would realize it right away and wouldn't be any damage. And in here, that U-joint right there, if they could put a 90 on those pumps, you could just grease it straight in instead of having to go right in between. That would be very nice as well. So obviously I think they came quite a ways from the first model, just because I drove that big M1 for what was it, not 8-9 years now, so hopefully I can run this one longer than that. So we're in the big M1. I'm just gonna show you how this machine works, some of the things I like about the machine, some of the stuff I don't like, and how it's different from the big M450. So we're just pulled into the grass field. You'll see in a minute that this cab's a lot louder than the new one, just because it is a 20-year-old cab, and the main gearbox that's right behind the cab is not 100%. We've had it worked on a few times. It blew up. It seized up once, and it's just hard to get the parts for them now. This is the John Deere 6000 series chopper's cab. The controller's the same. All those lights are on the 6000 series. The only thing that's different is that right there. Krone put in a display that shows the RPMs for the mower decks and stuff, and there are also some like that. It counts the acres that you're doing stuff. So some stuff I don't like about this mower is the hand control here. Just like the John Deere choppers, you have to hold on to the handle, otherwise it'll speed up and slow down. Mostly it'll just speed up, and so it does kind of wear on your hand all day if you have to hold it the whole time. Where the new choppers, well, the new mowers, you just push it forward, you let it go, and that it'll stay at the speed that you set it at. I think they call it smart drive. While this is just a hydrostatic. Some of the other things I don't like is the front mower deck. It doesn't float very nice just because it's how it's set up. The springs and stuff kind of pull it from the front, which I can show you after. And while the new ones, they pitch up right from the back. So when you get into a dip or something, on this one you have to focus a lot and make sure that you pick up your front mower deck, otherwise it'll dig right into the sod and it'll plug up. And I've blown up a couple crutches just so you don't catch it any time. Some of the other things I don't like about is, and it was the first one, so they had 300 horsepower on it, and you can tell that the mower does use almost 300 horse. And this thing doesn't have a merger, which is probably a good thing, because I don't think it would handle it very well. She likes to run warm, so you do have to blow it out a lot. The newer ones have a lot better cooling systems, so you don't have to worry about it. The electronics on these are also, it wasn't built strong enough, because I've had a couple of computers and the fuse panels, they'll burn out in the back. Like, I know for the lights it burnt out where the relay goes, so we had to put a new one in. And then one of them, I'm not sure what it's called, a different control box also has gone twice on this. It lasts like a year or two, and they're also getting harder to find, so it's just the older the machine gets, the harder it is to find the parts. So it's kind of the main reason why we wanted to upgrade. We got more of the land, so you do use the machine more. So some of the things I like about the machine is the cab kind of does sit lower than the 450s, so you're not as high, you don't get bounced around as much, I think. I want to say this thing is a smoother ride really than the 450. I don't know if it's just because I have to drive slower with this a little bit, or I don't, and like when I let my motor decks down, turning in and out of rows, this one it's all spring, so the motor deck, you just drop the decks and then they fall to the ground, and that's where they sit. While the 450s, it's a whole new design. There's those springs that make the motor deck ride on the ground. It's all done through hydraulic pressure. So it first has to drop on the ground. The computer will sense that it hit the ground, and then it kind of picks back up to the pressure that you set it to. So every time you let the motor decks down, it does kind of jerk around a little bit, which you gotta get used to it. It's not a big deal, but I would like if they could refine that a little bit so you didn't notice it as much. Which in this case, like you can't tell that I really dropped my motor decks, which is kind of nice. So something else on this machine is the amount you have to steer, like when you do a full turn, is a lot more than the other mower. So like the first day or so, whenever I use this mower, my arm would actually hurt quite a bit just because you've got to steer quite a bit all the time. It's a lot fewer, there's fewer turns on the other mower, which is kind of nice. It does pull, the new mower pulls hills a lot better because it has a lot more power and it's different hydraulics. This is just brake pumps, while the other one does have final drives, and so it does drive a lot different than this thing ever did. The other one, you don't really always have to have both hands moving, because most of the time I have to have my hand on that. But right now I don't have to. Just if you wait long enough, I hit a bump or something, it'll jar forwards, and then I'll drive a lot faster than I want to. I mean, overall, I think it was a great machine. I mean, we have about 60,000 acres on this machine, so you can't really put it down too much. And it was really their first generation machine that they put out, so I think it was a good machine. And they definitely changed a lot of things that they obviously saw they could improve on. I hope you liked the video. If you did, like and subscribe.